you are here presumably to learn more about how to apply to Page 73's 2021 Page 73 Playwriting Fellowship and 2021 Interstate 73 Writers Group. There's one application, it's online at page73.org/application, and that application is due Sunday, April 5th at 11:59 p.m. There's several parts to the application, some that you're filling in into a form and some PDFs that you upload into that form. One thing to know is that you can't save your progress on the form. You have to have everything ready to go for the moment that you want to upload. So while this application is for these two programs for calendar year 21, it's really worth noting, and I think it's really important to say that Page 73 has met the vast majority of writers who we've worked with in production, in summer residency, and of course in the Fellowship and Writers Group through this application every year. It's just the most robust pipeline we have for meeting new writers, and we put a lot of time, thought, and resources into making sure that we look at these applications carefully, and it's really just the best way we have for getting to know writers, so I strongly encourage everyone to use it. So starting with some eligibility requirements. I just paused. I think I'll see if someone writes a question, which I'll probably be able to get to later, but if you're writing a question and I'm not acknowledging that, it could be that I don't understand the technology. We'll see how this goes. Okay, so to be eligible for this application, there's a couple requirements. We try to define a point in the early career that you should be at. We say completed 2 full-length plays or 3 one-acts. The idea is that we are a professional resource for writers who are professionally pursuing playwriting. You should have taken a few steps down that road in your own commitment to writing. And in saying, another requirement we have is that you have a commitment to playwriting as a professional career. So that's from that sort of very early point, having just maybe completed your second script ever, up through another requirement for eligibility is that you not have yet had in New York City a professional production contracted with the Actors Union. Typically, if you're not sure if you're in that camp or not, typically if the actors have received full salary, pension, and health, that's a full contract with the union. We would call that a professional off-Broadway debut. That puts you or graduates you from our mission. So we are working specifically with playwrights in these programs, in our productions, and everything we do, who have made that professional commitment to playwriting as a career, but haven't yet had their professional debut off-Broadway. And then, of course, if you get to come see a Page 73 show, those are the professional off-Broadway debuts of each playwright. We work with U.S. residents exclusively, and we also, this application is for playwrights who are not currently enrolled in a full-time school program. Another thing I'll say along eligibility is this application is for us to meet playwrights. It is really, the fellowship and the writers group are really playwright development programs. It's not a writing competition. It's not submitting a play to see if it wins a certain prize. You are going to be asked, and we'll get into the details of the application, but to talk about yourself, your body of work, and submit work that represents what you're up to, because what we are doing is evaluating the application as a whole, not just picking out a play that's particularly exciting. That sort of informs everything about this application. So, a little bit more about the 2 programs that you can apply for. The Page 73 Playwriting Fellowship, that's a singular opportunity that we offer every year. The 2021 fellow will be the 17th in our history. It comes with a $10,000 cash grant for the playwright that is used in all the ways that cash is useful. Playwrights pay rent, reduce the amount of day jobs they need to have. $10,000 is both a significant amount of money, and it's also, you're not necessarily going to be able to retire from it, but it's a new piece of, it's a new tool that a playwright has when they're the fellow. There's also a $10,000 development budget that the playwright, in coordination with me, the artistic director, and our associate producer, we decide together how best to, throughout the fellowship year, to use that $10,000 development budget. And so that is a distinct budget from the cash prize that the playwright takes. The fellowship was created to be a set of flexible resources, and that has stayed true to this day. Fellows have used it for workshops and readings. They've used it to travel. They've used it for research into specific projects. They've used it to see theater that they need to see. Really, the imagination of the playwright is sort of what it can be used for. And the other thing about the fellowship is you don't need to live in New York City for it. You will need to be able to come to New York City probably several times throughout the fellowship year to really make the most of the opportunity to meet with industry, to have workshops presented, and that final opportunity and a part of the fellowship every year is that there's at least one public thing that we present. Often that's a reading following a workshop, but something public where Page 73 and the fellow are working together. If the fellow is around and it's appropriate, they're also invited to join Interstate 73 and come to our summer residency. Interstate 73 is the other opportunity you can apply for through this application. You can, of course, apply for both. I'll say that probably 10 more times. You should apply for both if you're eligible. And for Interstate 73, this is the group where you do need to be able to come to our office in Brooklyn about 2 times a month, and so this is for New York City area playwrights. It was, fun fact, named by Krista Knight, who was our 2007 fellow. When she became the fellow, one of the resources she said that she could really use was a writers group, and she named it Interstate 73, and that's really grown up into the program that it is today. So it's 8 playwrights that we select. Sessions are run by our associate producer, Kari Ullman, and I attend almost all the sessions. And the playwrights are assigned different weeks throughout the year. You end up meeting for 20 sessions. It's 10 months out of the year. We take July and August off. Playwrights receive a stipend for attendance. We really want to honor the fact that you're working as a playwright, whether you're coming to present your own pages or if you're coming to listen to your peers' pages. It's all important work. It's how the group coheres. And so you receive a stipend every time that you attend a meeting. Finally, at the end of the calendar year of meetings for I-73, we start to arrange a reading that can be a further opportunity to develop a work. That reading can be public, often is public, doesn't necessarily have to be. It's not, we don't try to see it as the absolute culmination of the year. It could be of a play you worked on in I-73 for sure, but it's just another opportunity to maybe introduce you to industry or to a director who you might want to collaborate with. And the other important thing about I-73 that is somewhat different than some other writers groups is we don't ask you to write anything in particular. In the various sessions that you present pages throughout the year, you could bring a different play every time. It's a working writers group for you to make the most of. So that's the fellowship in Interstate 73, which are the 2 things you're applying for through this application. All right, so let's talk about the application itself. It's all online. Again, that's page73.org/application. You can see it there, and a lot of the information about the programs and eligibility that I just said is also written out there. There is some basic info that we gather, name, email, address, all of that. The first document that you upload is extremely important. It's the letter of intent. And this, I like to say that this is really, I want you to think about how this is an application process, not a writing contest, specifically with this letter of intent. We pose a specific series of questions that we really want to read your responses to. We're not asking for a general artist statement about your goals. I think playwrights have sometimes maybe even been frustrated to learn they can't necessarily just reuse language. I know you spend a lot of time applying. I do know it's very consuming. It's also really important for us to get to know a writer to really hear the response to these questions. So I just want to emphasize probably one of the most important things I could do during this. I just see someone doesn't have sound. I just hope that's not me that isn't. No, I think someone else would have said so. Okay. So anyways, I just want to state the importance of the letter of intent. for this application process. So the first question, introduce yourself. What do you hope to accomplish through your writing? It's your chance to give us a sense of, thank you, Jan or Jan, I appreciate that. It's your chance to give us a sense of what you're up to in your writing. Are you asking questions of your audience? Are you demanding that actors do a certain type of work? Are you exploring character? Are you most interested in melodrama? Anything that you feel like sums up what you're up to. That opening of that letter of intent is your chance to let us in. The next two questions to talk about your greatest artistic challenge and your greatest professional challenge. This is where I really think it's important to not focus on originality. A lot of playwrights at this point in their career where they haven't yet had their first professional premiere off Broadway might even have similar artistic and professional challenges: exposure, representation, getting enough people to read your work. That's great. No points for originality here. I want what all the readers are looking for, and ultimately me, are a playwright who is self-aware of where they're at and can describe those challenges. So I just encourage you not to worry about whether you're sounding. I read a couple times every year, oh, this probably sounds normal, or everyone says this, but that's okay. I want to hear from you what you really, when you look at your writing, what are your artistic challenges? I've really been having trouble with structure lately, or I keep starting new plays instead of finishing old plays. Anything like that. And then your professional challenge, professional exposure, not having had a production being one, of course. It could be more than that. It could be that you've shifted artistic styles recently and you no longer think people know how to read your work. Whatever it might be, those two questions are really, really important. And when I talk about how we evaluate the apps, I'll say again, but we really ask our evaluators to hone in on these questions and see if they're being answered. So make sure you really are answering those questions. And then the fourth sort of ties it all together. The question is specifically identify how page 73's resources can help you with those challenges. And just to say it again, this is an application process. You're applying for our resources to meet your challenges and push you forward in your career. And that's what we're going to be looking for in every successful candidate, is someone who has a need, who sees our programs as a tool, and where the fit is right, that's going to be a successful application. And I think the other thing you can answer in that fourth question about how our resources can help you address your artistic and professional challenges is sort of answering the question of why this coming year, why 2021 would be the year to sit in a writer's group for the year, why 2021 is the year that a high-profile fellowship is going to really help. I think that makes for a really exciting application. So after the letter of intent, there's the 10-page sample and the full script from which it comes. Please do have those be the same. We of course notice that. If you don't, we also really notice 10 pages. We really, really mean 10 pages. We do pay our readers, and they are paid for a certain amount of work, and one way we manage that is by knowing exactly what they're going to be getting, which is a letter of intent, a 10-page sample. So when you're choosing some tips for choosing your 10-page sample or some information session information, the first thing I'll say is it does not have to be the first 10 pages of your play. We hire really smart readers for the initial rounds, and of course the staff of page 73 is pretty comfortable reading new plays also. We will pick up wherever you want to drop us into your play. If there are specific relationships or points of action that we need to know, I suggest just adding a stage direction at the top of your sample, quickly catching us up as quickly as you can, but just catching us up where we're at. What I would say, your 10-page sample should be 10 pages of writing in the script that you are very excited about. Sometimes that is the first 10 pages of the play. I don't want to disparage the idea of a first 10-page sample, but I just want to clear the air that it does not have to be that at all. A question we get a lot, and when we get to the frequently asked questions section, I'll probably bring this up again, is if you've applied in the past, and we very, very frequently have repeat applicants some who become successful second, third time out, for sure, that happens all the time. The question is, should you change your sample? Should you change the play that you're submitting from? And what I will say is you probably have new initial readers every year. There's certainly no reason to suspect you're going to have the exact same people evaluating the first rounds of your script every year. But more to the point, in the sense that this is an application and not a writing contest, you need to put your best foot forward, and you need your application as a whole, of which the letter of intent and the 10-page sample are the two most looked at pieces in the initial rounds, to be extremely strong and to really show you. And so if that best play that shows that, the one that you just know really sings on the page or works, is the same one you submitted last year, it very well might still be the best idea to submit it this year. One catch to that, I would say, is if your letter of intent, it happens to be all about your new interest in writing Brechtian political drama, and then you submit a sample of a romantic comedy that you wrote a couple years prior, that, even if it's really wonderful, that might create some disconnect with an evaluator, with me reading the script saying, well, they say they're onto this new phase of their writing, but I can't see that from the sample. So I would say if your letter of intent needs to work with the 10-page sample, but the 10-page sample doesn't have to be the most current thing you've ever written. It should, in fact, be solid, and you should feel comfortable that it represents what you're up to. Then submit the full script. We ask for a resume. That's not a bio, that is a resume. And then you'll enter the name and contact information of a reference. We will contact references later in the process. You should let them know that you're going to list their name, but not every reference is going to be reached out to, and they don't have to submit a letter. After you click submit to all of that, you'll be asked some optional questions that you do not have to fill out. They're about demographics. We're very interested in knowing who's applying to us. The evaluators are never shown that information. It really is on the back end. So I encourage you to fill it out, but it is completely optional. So I've been talking a lot about the evaluators, and something that I think is really useful during this information session is for me to just tell you transparently how we run the application process once we receive it. So on April 6th, we'll wake up and there'll typically be around 400 applications. It sort of varies up and down each year, but it has been around 400 for the past 6 or 7 years now. Those 400 applications are, or plus or minus, we hire a really wonderful group called the Beehive Dramaturgy Collective to collaborate with us on the initial step of this application process. They have a network of artists, theater makers, dramaturgs, directors, playwrights, who they have identified as, really sharp readers, really thoughtful people, and they gather the bees, I suppose. I don't know if they like that metaphor, but they are called the Beehive. They gather their readers, and each application that gets submitted gets read twice. We check in with the scores. We have to make an initial cut, and then most of the applications then get read 2 more times. So for the most part, in that initial round, your application is being read 4 times by 4 different readers, and each of them are using the same scale to score. Now, I provide that scale. I give a sort of orientation to every reader. I talk about what we're looking for in the letter of intent, just what I was saying here, self-reflection about the point in their career they're at, what their challenges are, and really sticking the landing of understanding how page 73 is the resource that this coming year will be the tool that will help with those challenges. That's how we ask them to evaluate how successful on that scale was the letter of intent. And for the writing sample, which, to be honest, of course becomes more subjective, the thing I encourage all of our evaluators to do is to judge the writing on its own terms. What is it trying to achieve, and is it achieving it successfully? I think page 73 has very successfully supported writers who work in all sorts of genres, both in our productions, but especially maybe even more so in our writers groups, where we're pretty conscious about trying to put together cohorts that have everyone from the avant-gardists through the realists through the sketch comedians. And so a reader should be, the talented readers that we get to hire and that we get to pay to do this know how to meet a writer where they're at. And so then that you also get evaluated on the 10-page sample. Those scores combined, we have to use numbers early on because, of course, it's such a large amount of applications. And ultimately, the top 20% of those applicants get passed to me and to the Page 73 staff, who then take it from there. From that point, maybe I can jump to, timeline. That's actually what I'm supposed to talk about next, according to this legal pad here. So from the point that we received the applications, the top 20% of applicants in the office, our next job is to choose the semifinalists. The semifinalists are usually 12 to 15. Sometimes if we're really having a hard time, the number goes up. And we give ourselves till right around Labor Day to select the semifinalists. Semifinalists are then asked to submit an updated version of the play, because often between April and September work has been done on it, and a second play. So all semifinalists then have 2 plays that they're being evaluated, and at that point full scripts will be read. The letter of intent is still very important at that stage in the application. The process sort of splits into 2 at that point. We start putting together the Interstate 73 cohort. We reach out to people. You do not have to be a semifinalist to get into Interstate 73 by any means. So plenty of writers who catch our attention, we reach out to, we start re-asking the question, is a writers group meeting in Brooklyn 2 times a month over the course of 2021 a resource that you think you can use? And we piece together the group over the next month or 2. We really try to let everyone know by, I think the goal is October. I think we hit that goal this year. And meanwhile, the semifinalists really are for the fellowship, I should say. And as we evaluate those, we are aiming to get those down to just a few finalists for the fellowship. And the finalists are notified. We go public with the semifinalists, but the finalists are then notified privately in usually around Thanksgiving, early December. They're asked to submit yet more writing, as well as fill out a new, sort of a new letter of intent. We ask more specific questions about how the year might be used. Finalists also meet with me and Page 73 staff for an interview, and then we have the final decision to make, ideally by New Year's Eve, and we select the fellow, and then that all gets announced in the new year. I can't tell if I'm going too fast. Okay, so I have put together some frequently asked questions from prior years, because we've done this information session for a while, and again, usually I get people in a room with me, which I much prefer, and also some playwrights very helpfully emailed me a couple questions before today, since they weren't able to pivot from the in-person to this stream. So I'm going to sort of provide some of your own frequently asked questions here. I do believe that if you typed a question, I would see it. The technology seems to be working in that way. So some of these get really specific here right away, and I really like that. So let's just dive in. This question is there any advantage to submitting a revised version of the script that you submitted last year versus a new script? I actually think I just talked about that, but just to say it again, you're trying to put your best foot forward with this application, and the same script 12 months apart might still very well be the best way to do that. And so I think there's definitely nothing wrong with submitting the same thing a second time. Make sure you like your sample, and make sure that your sample that you're submitting is in some harmony with your letter of intent. What are the most common qualities in successful applicants? You might ask. Someone asked. I would say it's a really strong letter of intent, a letter of intent that makes us really understand that this is a playwright who is, from the writing sample, we're going to agree they're talented, or, probably there's not much more to talk about. But from the letter of intent, we get a sense that they are really working in the right direction, that they have that self-awareness that I was talking about what they're working on personally, artistically, and what they want to develop or expand on professionally, and that we really see how we can help them with that, so that it's sort of like, I said stick the ending earlier about the letter of intent. It's that idea of marrying a writing sample that, of course, we get really excited about with a sort of an argument for yourself in the letter of intent that is really compelling. I think that's what any I-73 member or any fellow would have in common. How much does a playwright's prior theatrical experience impact their candidacy? And can you essentially be too green for the opportunities? I like that question because we use this phrase early career a lot, but so do lots and lots of other people. It's not always, it doesn't always mean the same thing. To say it again, our very specific definition of early career is tied to whether or not you've had a New York City off-Broadway debut on a professional equity contract. So all of writers who have not yet had that, we're going to call early career. To be explicit, that has nothing to do with age. We get asked that question a lot, and actually if you look at our fellows and if you look at the playwrights we've produced, when we've produced them, you immediately see a very wide spectrum of ages. But what they all have in common is that point in their career. When we worked with them, they had not yet had the professional premiere. Now, the other part of this question was, can you be too green? I would say, especially for the fellowship, yes. I actually think it's fair to say that yes, you can be too green. And that has to do with the idea that I just said one of the things that makes a successful application is someone who it is the right time to take our resources and really move themselves forward. And I think you can be too green in your career to exactly be ready to do that. The writers group, on the other hand, it's probably, as I said, we pick writers of all sorts for the writers groups and from different genres, but or genres, that's not the right word, different styles of writing, approaches to writing. But I would say we also look at a range of green, if we're all happy with that word, and maybe we're not, but green to more experience. And so I would say that for I-73, there's not quite that same threshold that I just described for the fellowship. We still do ask that you've completed 2 plays, that you've made a professional commitment to playwriting. We are a professional playwright development company. It is not a place for, I wrote this one play this one time because I'm a lawyer and I thought there was a really interesting story coming through my office, so I turned it into a play. That could be great, that could be really exciting, but if you're not a playwright, then our professional playwright development programs aren't necessarily for you. Do we put an emphasis on the materials submitted or on the playwright's body of work and their career progress and potential? This is my favorite refrain for this info session. I can tell I've already said it many times. I'll say it again. This is an application, and so the emphasis is on the materials. If I had some bias towards you being one of my absolute favorite playwrights, and then when I look at the page and what you submitted was a letter of intent that doesn't answer the questions, that doesn't demonstrate self-reflection on where you're at, and a sample chosen sort of quickly from the front of a play that doesn't help me understand where you're going with your writing, I will not allow my previous bias or understanding of you being a good playwright into the process. I will say this application is not successful. So can't say it enough. The emphasis is on this application. The resume is part of your application. We're going to understand what your body of work is, but that's much more about understanding that point in the career I was just talking about. Have you had a little bit of experience? Have you had a few things under your belt so that if we suddenly give you $10,000 development budget and a big spotlight that you're going to be able to make the most of that? That's a little more what the resume, I think, does for us. Someone said, could you just give some quick and dirty do's and don'ts? I don't know, but I wrote 4 things down, and I'll do them quickly so it'll count. I said, do tailor your letter of intent to this application. If you've applied in the past, I think a whole year has passed. You probably need some new reflection about where you're at, even if perhaps that reflection becomes, I'm frustrated that I'm not farther along than I was a year ago. And if you've written an artist statement recently for one of our beautiful peer companies, their questions might not satisfy ours in any way. And so while acknowledging the amount of work playwrights put into applying, I also ask for that work in this case. Oh, this isn't quick and dirty at all. Okay. Don't just talk about needing productions. This is a it's one I've been thinking about a lot lately. If when you look at your artistic and professional, so we're a company that works with playwrights who haven't yet had that off-Broadway premiere. And there are playwrights who have sort of been putting in the time, been doing the work, really talented, maybe even recognized for that talent at multiple institutions. And they are standing on the runway waiting for the plane to take off saying, what I need is that production. What I need is that production. I have deep sympathy for that. We have an entire company trying to produce just those playwrights. For this application, for the fellowship in Interstate 73, what I will say is that doesn't make for the strongest argument, because going back to things I've been saying before, you are trying to say why the resources of the fellowship, the resources of the writers group, will move you forward in your career and your artistry next year. And to say, well, what I really need is a production, that might be a cry to page 73, like, are you paying attention? Are you reading me when you do season planning? But this application, while I acknowledged right at the front, it feeds our season planning process, you are applying for resources called the Fellowship in I-73. And so to speak about those is how to succeed in the application. Still not quick and dirty, oh my gosh. Do choose 10 pages that excites you. Worry less about, again, starting at the top of the play so that we can understand, and if you know that later on things get kind of deep or gritty or wild or funny in the way that you want, like, give us that. That's what we want to read. Again, we hire, and then we ourselves are really smart readers. We want to just jump in with you and add a little note if you need. Don't talk yourself out of applying. That was like my Oprah moment. Wasn't that inspirational? Okay, what sort of applicants excite page 73? I'll marry this with another FAQ that we get a lot, which is, does page 73 have a style or a type of writer that we're looking for? The answer is we don't have a style or type of writer we're looking at. Certainly for Interstate 73, we're quite specifically looking for all types of writers. Our fellows I'm just thinking back over the past decade of fellows, they've all pursued theater in different ways, but they've all been sort of masters at what they want to be accomplishing. And so the sort of applicants that excite, so putting aside, so no, I don't think we have like a style we're looking for. And the sort of applicants that excite us are the ones whose, so often I say, I'm remembering John Caswell or Zora Howard and say, like, I can remember where I was when I read that sample. There's something so alive about the writing, whether it's prose or verse. There's something so honest and revealing about the letter of intent that I, as a person with resources to offer, can feel myself going, yes, 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 these resources to this person, we're going to do something in this coming year. So the excitement it really comes out of that two-part of the application, that letter of intent and the reading the 10-page sample. Just another insider bit of info for our readers, I strongly encourage them to start with the letter of intent and then read the sample so that you understand the ground that the playwright stands on before you then approach their work. I think that's essentially the only true way to see this as an application. Do I have to live in New York City? That gets asked a lot. For the fellowship, the answer is no. You do not have to live in New York City. For Interstate 73, you don't have to technically live in one of the 5 boroughs, but you need to be able to get to Brooklyn on a frequent basis. Yes. Oh, I see a question. Oh no, I have to do something to get it. Okay. It is a question about Beehive Dramaturgy Studio, but for some reason it's only showing me the first part of the question, and when it says see more, I can't. I spoke a bit about Beehive Dramaturgy being involved in our reading process. Are they solely responsible for, and then Facebook cuts it off. So Beehive Dramaturgy, I'm just gonna, wait, maybe that's, oh no. I'm gonna presume that I can fill in the blanks for the rest of that question. They are responsible for that whole first round of reading that gets us from the full pool of application down to the top 20%. They manage who reads, how they read, using the e-readers and getting access to the applications. They collate all the data that comes in from the reader evaluation forms, and then we have periodic meetings with them to see how the process is going. They submit the list. Maybe you were asking about this. They submit the list of readers to us, just so that we do know who it is, just in case for some reason we saw someone we didn't think was appropriate, but they are a deeply awesome and talented group of people who have wonderful community. Can I apply as a partnership is a FAQ we get a lot. Often from musical theater duos, sometimes from just writing partners. What I will say is we've had that work well twice in our writers group, and so I have no hesitation about that. It has not happened for the fellowship. I don't think there's any particular reason it couldn't. The duo would have to share the award, of course. That is the award wouldn't double, I guess. But I want to be very open to that, but also tell you transparently that hasn't actually happened. But in the writers group we've had, and we do have musical theater writers, that's another question we get sometimes, very open to that for either the fellowship or the I-73. We have had musical theater writers in I-73 many, many, many times, including duos, and we recently produced a musical, and it was a lot of fun. We liked it. I think I just ran through my FAQs. I'm just doing I have a whole command center here. I'm doing a quick check on our Twitter, which is different than Facebook, and I don't think I know how to work it. But I don't think there's a question there. Okay. I am going to revisit my questions. I just want to be available if anyone wants to type in one more question for just a little longer. Great. Ultimately, I feel, looking at these notes that I'm glad I took, I think we've covered everything here in the info session. So the last thing to say is we're very open to answering questions. I know most people are actually going to experience this. Oh, I see another question. I'll finish my thought and then I'll answer it. I know most people are going to experience this probably after the fact, not live. Feel free to comment in the Facebook event. We'll see that and answer the question. You can tweet us at page 73. You can also email info@page73.org. We want to make sure that you have information to be successful. All right. Does the 10-page sample need to be from a full-length play, or can it be from a one-act? It can be from a one-act. I wouldn't suggest that it be a 10-page play. That question has come up before, so I'll just throw that out there. It can be from a one-act for sure, as long as you're also hitting that requirement in eligibility that you've written multiple one-acts, some full-length plays. But I think if your most exciting 10 pages that you think works really well as a sample is from a one-act, that's just fine. Screenwriting credits on the resume, totally great. While we're there, I would not suggest including a screenplay. I don't know that anyone is thinking they would, but I would not suggest including a screenplay or a pilot as your sample. I do think the writing styles are different. The ability to read those, the formatting is very different. I think we want to really meet you as a playwright. Great, and some words of encouragement that we're covering what we wanted to. I'm very glad about that. All right, please do ask us questions in all those digital ways that you can if you joined me live. Thank you for that, and if you're watching this down the road, sorry for the funny pauses while I was trying to figure out some of the technology, but I hope this has still been useful. Reporting live from a COVID-free zone, socially distant from everyone, but emotionally very close to you all. Thank you so much, and happy applying. I can't wait to get to dig in.